I'm impressed that there are microbes that want to eat alcohol-soaked oak. That's like some charred alcohol-soaked oak is somehow appealing to them. Like, oh, it's empty. Let's go for it.
That's what yeast does.
I guess so.
That's what yeast does.
And there are funguses that grow outside of distilleries based off of the fumes coming from the barrels. So outside of Jack Daniel's right now, there's lawsuits going on because this black mold is growing on the buildings around the neighborhood.
Really? It likes those whiskey fumes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's shocking. You wouldn't think
Yeah, like
that
if
any
you see the
microbe
rack
would be into
houses
that.
and they're black, that's considered like an old rack house, and it's served its time. They talk about that in the book Proof.
We're losing all the content. Oh, you're recording, are you?
Good man. He's learned to just start recording early. But yeah, you want to jump in?
Yeah, let's jump back into this.
Jump in. Podcast mode.
Geeking out too much.
Put my phone on airplane mode.
So, we're back after 3 weeks. You probably didn't notice it in YouTube land, but Sohan is a little bit dry. 3 weeks dry from having some whiskey. We brought CJ from Still Austin, and we've been catching up as to where we know each other from, and I think this is going to be a fun one. We've got some interesting spirits from Still Austin to talk about. We've got a couple neat things lined up. Sohan, what kind of tea are we going to start off with today?
Well, I wanted to pair teas with whiskeys, as we tend to like to do, and also, CJ actually comes here. CJ is actually like a tea house person who actually already likes tea and is into tea, so I thought I wanted to let him try some of the new stuff that we've got, because we just got a bunch of new stuff in that I don't know if you've tried yet, like real new. So gonna make some of that. And we were gonna start with rye.
Yeah. So start off with one of our things, our straight rye whiskey made from 100% Brasetto rye, all grown in Texas. We work with Tex Malt for all of our grains. So everything that we use, and we work with one specific farm called Lone Star Family Farms. We've worked with them pretty much since the beginning, but all of our grains for all of our whiskeys are all grown in Texas, locally sourced, up near the Panhandle.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm all about having the grain itself have an identity. Like these guys went down to Wilson Valley Mercantile. We had some of their. They haven't been here on the show yet, but I had some of their whiskey, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And what I liked about it is that the grain was grown by them. It had an identity. It wasn't just some grain. And it wasn't just even the cultivars, like you just said, where it's grown.
Right.
That's so much of part of the tea for us. Where is it grown? This is from Guizhou. This is Guanduancha. Have you had this one yet?
I don't think I have.
All right, it's real new.
I'm excited.
So it's a green tea, but it's this like farmer green tea that is made by farmers to drink themselves, not as a market product. So it's very rustic. It's cooked with fire. They're cooking it in these woks that are fed with fuel, like wood and chaff fuel. So it's got a smoky edge to it, and then it's sun dried like Sheng Pu-erh.
Okay.
And instead of being dried with hot air or like indirect heat the way you would for other more modern style green teas, this is like a green tea. I think of this as like a green tea that if you were to go back in time 200 years ago and drink green tea, it would probably taste a lot like this, because it's these local plants that live in Sichuan, Guizhou. I don't remember. Do we have a camera on the map?
Oh, yeah.
Good man. So China, Guizhou, and Sichuan is like here.
Okay.
And so that's where this tea is from. And they have a local cultivar in Sichuan called Tai Cha, which means moss tea. And you can see how dark these leaves look for a green tea. If you could compare this to Longjing or Su Maofeng or Tai Cha Maojian, another more modern style green tea, they're much darker. That's because the Tai Cha plants, which is this local land race, it's this local cultivar of plants that just live in Sichuan, they're green in the early spring and they turn purple in the late spring, early summer. And so these leaves were purple. When they were alive, they were purple in color, and so when they're dried, they turn this dark color instead of turning green, but they are in fact green tea. And traditionally they would store this, they'd pick this tea, they would process it. It's got this like smoky, very robust smoky character, different than the more modern green teas, much less delicate, much more, bold. And then they would age it. They would age it in jars. and they call it Guanduancha. Guan means jar, so it means jar tea. I'm not going to make any jokes about that. You can do them in your head if you want. We don't need them. Controversial figure. We're going to leave him alone. But the tea is fantastic. It's one of my favorite teas that we have right now and it's inexpensive. I like when you can get like a really good tea that's not expensive because it's not blown up and it hasn't been commodified. That's like the sweet spot for me. I'm going to go ahead and give you another smell now that's warmed up.
It's accessible.
It's accessible.
A lot of people.
Yeah, and it's like when I think rye is I love rye. I'm like really into rye, and I know that some people, I guess it can be kind of divisive or whatever, but I really like the ryeness of rye, and the tea that I always think of pairing with rye, and that I paired with rye on this show before is Sheng Pu-erh,
right.
And this is basically the Sheng Pu-erh of Guizhou. So back to our map. Sheng Pu-erh is also a very primitive processing style local land race of plants called Dayazhong, big leaf tea plants, and they're from Yunnan here, and then you go just over here, this is Guizhou. So same idea, old style plants, indigenous plants, they were not disseminated, transmitted here from Mengding Shan and this whole narrative of tea genetics and processing styles and culture, being developed up here and then spreading throughout China. This is just tea lives here. Tea is native to this place. It lives here. So these people, their tradition is not related to the monastic Buddhist tradition that spread tea across China and Korea and Japan. It's just what the people are doing there. And it's this very primitive style processing, a local type of plant, and it's sun-dried just like Sheng Pu-erh. And so for me, this is almost like Sheng Pu-erh. It's a lot like Sheng Pu-erh. It's kind of the missing link between Sheng Pu-erh and the type of green tea that we usually think of as green tea.
Okay. So when you're saying that they turn purple in the summer, what caused them to turn purple? Is it are they oxidizing while they're on the plant itself, or what's causing that?
It's a genetic switch that gets turned on. Okay. So it's it's a genetic thing, and it has to do with the warmer weather, and it starts producing a plant pigment called anthocyanin, and that's what makes blueberries blue. And that's what makes purple tea purple, is anthocyanin and proanthocyanidins. And so tea plants can make that color, but they don't usually. Most of the time, they're not making that pigment. And when they do, that's when you get purple tea.
Gotcha.
And why do they do it? They do it in response to different environmental factors. They can do it in response to freezing. These ones do it as the weather warms up, they start to turn purple. And so nobody knows why, per se, but we understand the mechanism by which they do it, at least as far as what chemical is responsible, and that this chemical is being manufactured by the plant. We don't necessarily know what the genetic mechanism is. Is it epigenetic? Is it an epigenetic switch that gets turned on? How does that work? Nobody knows that. This is a very obscure tea. If you were to go to a tea shop in Beijing or Shanghai, they most likely would never have heard of this tea. And what they do with it in the place where it's from, in Guizhou and Sichuan, is they boil it, which is different than what we do. We're going to steep it, but in Sichuan they will actually boil this tea, and in a little ceramic jar. They'll put it in a little ceramic pitcher-looking thing, kind of like my Gongda Bei here, like this, but only made of like stoneware. And they'll put it over white coals, and they'll let it boil in this little pitcher, and they'll pour it out of that. And so that's the jar tea. That's how they do it. So very excited to share this.
I like what Still Austin is doing. I've been following them for a very long time, and they started off with an integrity of having a new make spirit. So they weren't bringing in aged spirit from other places. They just did everything from those local grains, and they just made it, sold it, set it down, sold the clear spirit. And then as the other things were aging, after 1 year of aging, they released a 1 year. And after a couple of years, they released a 2 year.
And this is a tea that would be aged in Guizhou. What we're drinking is fresh. Because the guy that I get this from, Xiangge, who was introduced to me by Ray Liu of Grass People Tree, she's how I know about all these Guizhou tea. She's got a tea company based in the UK. And she's there right now actually with Moncho. Moncho and Ray are hanging out right this second in China. But yeah, the guy I get this from, I've asked him to source me aged Guanduancha, but because he didn't make it, he's the first organic certified tea farm in Guizhou. He's very meticulous about his growing standards. And so he's like, I don't want to sell you a tea that I didn't make because I don't know if it'll be clean.
Oh,
and
okay,
so
gotcha.
yeah, so we just get the fresh Guanduancha from them, and theoretically we like to put some away and age it ourselves, but we've never managed to because we always drink it all or sell it all, pretty right away. And that was theoretically you could think of that as a rinse, but I always drink it anyways.
It's a little more earthy than you would expect from a green tea.
That's right.
Yeah, almost like
Earthier.
it's got like a chocolate note to
Yeah.
it too, like especially on the aroma and
Yeah.
when smelling the leaves too.
Yeah, it's definitely richer, darker, more earthy, more rustic kind of than a classic modern green tea like Suma Feng or Longjing or Bilo Tuan or something like that.
I love green tea in the summertime. I'm more of an oolong in the fall, but green tea in the summer.
It's the perfect time to drink green tea because it's fresh. It's just the right kind of fresh. It's not early spring fresh where it hasn't had a time to sit yet and settle and kind of breathe. It's kind of come into its own. It's sat long enough, but it hasn't sat long enough to start to get to age and get old. And I love green tea in the summer, and also it's cooling. It has a cooling character to it.
We were talking about seasonality and seasonal releases coming out of Still Austin, and they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, one of the things we'll get into that a little bit from now. But for our Bottle and Bond series, last year was the first year we released it. But basically, each season we have a different release of ours that kind of like how with tea, how it makes you feel a certain way. It's one of those where this whiskey feels like it should go with each of these seasons.
I love that.
But one of the ones that a lot of us distiller-wise on the production team, we like the rye more than the bourbon. It's different compared to a lot of other ryes. Part of that comes from the varietal of rye that we actually use.
Cool.
So same as how there's different types of corn, like you have yellow, blue, red, and white, and a bunch of different others. There's different varietals and types of rye too. So with a lot of rye whiskey, kind of the one that comes to mind is like Michter's, Bullet. You get a lot of that black pepper spice, that black peppercorn, where it's very polarizing. So it's one of those where you get people that they either hate rye whiskey or they really like it. For us, the varietal that we use is called Brasetto. So it still has a little bit of that black peppercorn spice to it, but it gives off more like fresh mint, eucalyptus notes that are it's more approachable. It's kind of like a gateway drug to rye whiskey.
This is, this is a lot like that. You're right. I'm glad it fits in a lot of different ways because this is more
100%.
approachable than a lot of green teas because a lot of green teas can be bitter, astringent, and Sheng Pu-erh can definitely be astringent and bitter. This has a lot less capacity for bitterness. I'm using boiling water right on this.
Yeah.
And it's less likely than most green teas do that. But it still has a ton of character and it's still really good. So I'm super excited to dive into this rye. And like I said, I am definitely in the latter camp where I really do like rye a lot. And Bullet rye is that's like, when I think about rye, that's the profile I'm thinking of. So I'm excited to try something with a different cultivar, with a different varietal of rye, which I said, that's what I love, is like getting into the plant part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the rye whiskeys, they can be many different things. Over the past weekend, we were with Corey up at the Whiskey Vault doing a tasting, and we were pulling out a sweet rye. And that was an interesting one, and that was a one-off because it was also chocolate malted.
Ooh,
so they roast the grain to get a chocolatey malted coloring.
But there's no
on
chocolate in it.
There's no chocolate in it, but it still came across like with this coffee note on the finish that was just really interesting. So ryes can be so many things. Many people, because most of the ryes that are on the shelf are from one particular industrial distillery called Midwest Grain Products, or MGP. And so your Bullet rye is actually produced by that large
Got
distillery
it.
company. And usually there is a 51 rye and a 95 rye mash bill coming out of there. So most people, when they're tasting it, they're tasting that 95 rye mash bill, and it goes among a number of different brands. Now they all treat it differently, they all batch it differently, they all have different flavor profiles, but it can tend to be very similar. So a good 50% of what you see on the shelf can be from maybe one or two sources when it comes to rye whiskey. So when you have a company like Still Austin creating a rye and using different varietals, this is where I think craft stands out. Because they can. This is what I've had people asking me in tastings. Why is Texas whiskey so much more expensive? Well, if they're taking the time to work with local farmers, to work with local artists, the same as you're doing with your ceramics.
Absolutely.
Local artists are on the labels of all of these bottles. So I think that's important, and it's worth an extra $1 or $2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Especially when it's free. Bring it on.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I helped out. Hey, I'm getting tea. I'll supply the whiskey.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. It's an even trade, all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfectly fine with that.
We have some glasses in front of you if you want to pour some rye whiskey for us.
And then the other one right here is a soon-to-be release from our DRS series. So once a quarter, we do what's called a DRS, or a Distillery Reserve Series. And what that basically is it's either a new interesting mash bill that we've come up with, or it's finishing in a finishing cask. We release those about once a quarter. And this one that I've got here is the new and upcoming one, where it's our rye finished in Madeira. Whiskey or?
Right there is great.
It's his thing.
Okay.
Drinking whiskey out of teacups. Yeah, I'm excited. Ooh, I can smell it. I can smell the rye.
Fresh
It's nice
craft.
though. It is. It's a much. I mean, just from this, comparing to the kind of standardized rye that you taste around, it definitely has more springiness to it, more almost like lightness, like floralness to it.
It's very floral and approachable. And I think a big part of that comes from the varietal that we use. For all of our stuff, we're grain to glass. So everything from getting in the raw grain material all the way to putting it in a bottle and slapping a label on it, everything is done in-house at Still Austin. Now, on the production side for us, we do everything from the raw materials to throwing it in a barrel, and even as a group of distillers, we give tasting notes and feedback of the DRSs of, hey, this one we believe is ready. That one we do on the backside here.
Ooh, there was a mintiness on the nose with that floral that it's like thinner on the palate. It's a sweet mint on the palate.
Interesting. Okay, I'm getting like almost like a marshmallow fluff. I haven't even tasted it. I've just smelled, but like everybody has marshmallow fluff. Not a marshmallow, but marshmallow fluff, like what you put in a fluffernutter sandwich.
Yep.
Yeah. It's got vanilla. But it's not like all up in your face with vanilla. Like some whiskeys tend to be like really. That's like a really strong note. It's like this, almost like a French vanilla, like a kind of delicate vanilla.
Right.
Like a vanilla custard almost.
Oh, it's so nice. Oh, yeah, it's so good. And I love the rye taste. It's the thing that I like about rye, is there. I don't know exactly how to characterize it, but it's like, yeah, it's good. Corey's dancing over there. Yeah, it's really nice. It's got this it's really hard for me to describe, but this like groundedness. It's got this like floor, that rye floor, and it's right here, and it's just this like nice, even kind of textured quality that I think about when I think about rye, and it's there, but there's all of this kind of blossoming nuance on top of that.
It's like in a concert, when you're at a concert and you're listening to the album The album seems like crisp and clean. It's like there's something missing. But when you're standing at the concert and you hear the hum that's there from the
Feel it.
amplifier,
Yeah.
that hum from the amplifier is in this. Yeah.
Or like it's like the sound of like a record, a vinyl record. You know,
Yeah.
there's the pops and the hiss of the vinyl record
Right.
that gives it that substance. I feel like that's what I get from rye. Is it gives it that substance, that ground level substance, and that's there. But it definitely is less aggressive than like Bullet with respect to that, and I can feel how it's connected to all of these floral and more sweeter. I get that mint now.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm having trouble classifying the mint. Is it spearmint? Is it wintergreen? Is it peppermint? It
I was
seems
just
like
thinking about that.
wintergreeny,
Yeah.
but it's a sweet wintergreen.
I get more spearmint
Yeah?
than wintergreen personally. Wintergreen, I think of that like root beer, you know?
Ah,
I don't get as much of
okay.
that.
That's one of those notes that people get a lot from rye is sassafras and
Yeah,
root
I actually,
beer.
now that I say it, I am getting it. So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I do get wintergreen. I get both, honestly. It's like it's really nice. It's not what do you think about when you think about minty. You think about minty, you think about toothpaste. You know what I mean? There's none of that. It's somehow the flavor of mint more than the fragrance of mint, which doesn't even make sense because I don't think I know what the flavor of mint is. But
It's
there.
more like mint leaves in cooking and stuff rather than like a
mint
candy cane
flavor.
or a peppermint.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more like
Yeah.
mint tea, like Moroccan mint tea, where they throw the tea leaves in with the mint and they cook,
Okay.
they steep them together. That's what they do in Morocco. They drink it all day long. That's all they drink. It's Chinese green tea with mint in it.
Interesting. I did not know that. That's awesome.
There's a lot of people that go into making this taste the way that it is, and there are two Nancys I want you to talk about.
Yeah.
There's a 50-foot tall lady. You want to talk about that one first?
Yeah, we so two Nancys, just to explain what both of them are. One of them is our master blender, Nancy Fraley. She's known as the nose within this industry. She's the type of person that her level of nose and expertise in that is the same as the people for perfume that can pick up those very minute details. She's
Great, love it.
incredible in that aspect. The other Nancy is Nancy, our column still. So that one is 50 foot tall, several tons, and named after Allison Hayes' character in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Oh, cool.
Nancy. So she's 42 feet tall, actually, but with our condensers up top, those are we've got two of them, and they're about 4 foot each, so it comes out to be 50 foot.
50 feet in heels.
Yes, basically, yeah.
Now,
That's great.
to
Love that.
get a whiskey that has more flavor off of a column, because we've talked column still and pot still
Yes,
before,
yes.
and column still is usually a very large, high
Right,
volume,
right.
high production, trying to get as much alcohol
Yeah,
out
and you're
of
stripping out a lot of those
a
esters
lot of
and
those
stuff.
flavors. Now, still Austin has some really interesting techniques to actually pull in some of those notes from the grain, so that there's many different facets. So they're pulling from different tiers or different levels of this column to bring in some of the darker flavors, some of the mid-range
Wow.
flavors. So it's almost like they're playing a piano and they're tuning it.
That's such like a virtuosic level of craft. Just for me to think about that, for someone who has no experience with distilling at all, but only tangentially through, this community, just the idea of pulling from different parts of the column is very, and then being able to infer like what that's going to be like after it's all blended together and put in a barrel, and everything is it definitely seems like a very high level of skill.
A lot of times when we're going on tours and we're talking to different people, you really try to simplify the conversation so that it's easy to understand. So usually you'll just say things like it's column still or pot still, but there's so many other permutations and combinations on what the distillers can do to tease out different flavors. And it's just really interesting what they're doing at Still Austin. They're also doing some gins over there that are really interesting, and they're using rye grain on the gin as well.
Interesting.
So for one of the things that gives our column a lot, it leaves more of those oils and flavor compared to other ones like where you'll do vodka and everything, is actually the design of the column itself. So Mike Delavante, who was a part of Appleton Rum for I believe 20 years, he was actually the one that designed our still, so it was designed to be more of a rum column. So it's designed to retain a lot more of those oils and flavors.
Hogo. That hogo. That's my favorite word. That's my word of 2024. Hogo.
Hogo?
Hogo.
And the muck pit.
yeah, exactly.
We don't use those there. That would be a little interesting. But the column still herself, Nancy, she's got 12 different rectification plates. And the way that a column still works is instead of a pot still where it's batch distillation, where you load, if you have a 100-gallon pot, you load 100 gallons of your beer into it, you distill it, and then you can either have that as low wines and redistill it, or do a single run distillation where it's high wines. But it's from start to finish, everything's done time-wise, and it's density of the oils of what comes off first.
Right.
Heads, hearts, and tails.
Right.
With the column still, you can't throw in 100 gallons into that all at once. So what we do is we have it's called a beer well, and really what it is, it's a holding tank where we pump out a fermenter into the beer well, and instead of loading in all 1,800 gallons directly into the column, we're pulling it off at about 5.5 gallons a minute and putting that through the column itself.
Got it. So it's like a hopper. It's like consistently going to be putting material beer in to be distilled, and then a lot of that is actually as in the form of vapor in the still.
Yes, that's actually nail on the head right there. So when you have two sections is what it's broken down into. You have your stripping sections and you have your rectification sections. So the stripping sections are where it's doing exactly what it sounds like. It's stripping the alcohol from that beer to where the beer goes in about 2/3 of the way up. It goes down the still with grain too, to where that grain and all that liquid's falling to the bottom. But it's having steam go in at the bottom as well that's allowing those vapors to go back up to the top of the still.
Right.
To the rectification sections where it's being recondensed back into higher proof alcohol. So it goes from a 12% beer to, when it comes off the still, about 135 proof. But we have 12 of those rectification plates that each one of those plates is a different density oil, because the lower plates at the bottom are more equivalent to what would be considered the tails for pot still, where those are the heavier oils that don't get transferred over into the batch distillation. They're at the very end, versus the stuff at the very top, those are the lighter ones. So those are what would be more considered the heads. So we've got it figured out of which plates we want open to match our flavor profile.
Wow.
Same thing happens in gasoline and separating diesel fuel. All of those separations get you from diesel fuel to high test.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's the exact same. It's called fractional distillation.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. It's heady, but I get it because I've been exposed to other things that are kind of like this. So, wow. That's so cool. And you said the actual human being who is blending and just overseeing this distillation process and the barreling process is also Nancy.
So she's overseeing the blending process.
Got
so the
it,
distillation
got it.
process is us in the back. It's me and we've got 11 people total, including our head distiller,
Holy
that
shit.
are on the production side.
Wow.
And we're running 24/5. So Sunday, 9 o'clock at night, all the way to Friday, 9 o'clock in the afternoon, something's being run back there.
Wow.
Whether it's a cook, a distillation, we're making whiskey 24 hours a week, 5 days a week.
Wow.
Nancy Fraley, she is blending. So each one of these bottles, they're blended in batches. So it's not one single barrel that goes into these bottles, because each barrel tastes different individually, and to get a consistent flavor profile, you have to blend them together. So for us, there are 30, 40 different barrels that go into a single batch, And what she does is she noses each of
Right.
those and goes, well, this one has a little bit more mint. This one has a little bit more vanilla. How do we balance all of these barrels so that it tastes the same every time?
Got it.
Because if you opened a bottle and it tastes different than the last one, but
Right.
it was marketed as the same, you'd feel kind of cheated.
Right, yeah, and so that's a thing for tea too, because teas change from season to season,
Right.
dramatically. And some teas, even like yuan sheng tuo, like witch's butter, it's coming from this big chunk. Different regions of that chunk are going to have different characters, and they're not blending. There's no blending going on there. There's no homogenizing that. It's a chunk. You use a knife to take it off. It's a chunk, and it's just the nature of the beast is that it's kind of like drinking single barrel whiskey, where it's like, well, this one was in the corner, and this one was upstairs, and this one was by the door, and they're all going to be pretty different because they're all different parts of the house. Yes, and I think that. I think that blending is such an art, and I also appreciate the variance that you do get between things like different barrels, different vintages, etc. I know that like the big companies like Jack Daniels and stuff, they're producing this super homogenized, super consistent product because they're drawing from tons and tons of barrels, and they're like probably got like a spectrometers and shit, and they're
They also
very
have
protected.
history on their side as well.
Yeah.
With they know how things are aging inside of their different warehouses over generations.
Right.
Whereas Still Austin is sitting at 8-10 years at the most.
Less.
Yeah.
We started distilling in 2018.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah.
Texas whiskey in general is less than 20 years old.
Right.
Wow.
So we're still trying to figure out. Everybody's still figuring it out, and everybody's carving out their own path and taking a different direction with it. Of this is the flavor profile we want. We found that this works, but at the same time, you have to also know your equipment. So know of like, hey, this part of our rick house does this. This part of this one does this. How can we have these barrels here? Do I need to take one from the
Right.
top left and mix it with the middle,
Right.
or is the top right go with the bottom left?
So we were talking about Texas whiskey having a certain character that kicks you and punches you because of the extraction from oak.
Right.
Still Austin is one of a couple in Texas that does something called, they call it slow water reduction, where they're adding water into the barrel as it's aging.
Okay.
So it's replacing some of the-
to account for the heat and what's getting sucked up in the wood.
Right, and
Yes.
the evaporation.
Got it. So you maintain more of that volume, and you don't get such like a strong tannic.
That's exactly right. So
Situation.
it's not necessarily replacing the alcohol. Nancy Fraley's the one that kind of brought this over. It's already been done for hundreds of years in the brandy world. So it's called élevage, which the direct translation, I believe, is babying the barrel.
To lift things up to raise it like a
Aw.
child.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Because
right, you're Canadian. You
you're-
know French.
you're treating the barrel and kind of raising it and pampering it instead of just throwing it and sitting it and leaving it there. So for us, for our products, what we do is before they're being pulled, sometimes a year, sometimes 6 months in advance, what we're doing is we're slowly adding water to that barrel. Reverse osmosis water, so that way it doesn't change the flavor of the whiskey in there. We're adding water directly to that barrel to keep that proof at a more consistent level, because at different proofs you're gonna pull out different tannins from the wood and
Right.
different flavors. So to just like you said, to help combat those tannin levels that happen in Texas heat and get those oak bombs, because Texas can do 2-3 year whiskeys pretty well, but once you get into 6, 7, 8 year whiskeys, you have to do things to help combat those tannins,
right.
or else it's way too oaky.
The same way you control the tea as you're pouring over the tea and trying to get an extraction, you can actually pull out more wood sugars. Those are the vanillas and the caramels, the sweeter notes. By adding that water back in, you're pulling more
Right.
wood sugars than pulling the wood tannins.
Got it. Super interesting. Okay, well, first of all, I want to say I love the pairing of these two. They pair
Works
really
really
well together.
Yeah.
Really well. Definitely one of my favorite pairings that we've done, mostly because I love this tea and I love rye. And this one is really nice. This is definitely one of the nicest ryes I've tried. they have something in common. I can't put my finger, I can't articulate it, but there's something that Guanduancha / Sheng Pu-erh has in common with rye whiskey that I really like.
The other one is a Madeira cask?
Yes, so this one is going to be the upcoming release. This is the our same rye, but finished in Madeira wine casks.
Ooh.
So it's going to be a little bit sweeter. I don't want to say too much about it.
And so what were the
three
casks,
glasses there.
what casks were this in? What,
That was just a brand new charred white American
new
oak.
charred white
So
American
it's
oak.
treated the
Okay.
same way as you would treat a bourbon with new
Got
oak
new
barrels.
oak,
Yeah.
new charred oak. Got
Yes.
it. And so this is a Madeira cask.
Yes, and this previous one was at just shy of 100 proof. This one is at 107.5. So a heads up.
Beautiful. And Madeira is from Spain?
Yes, it is a fortified wine. Once again, very popular in the older times when you had to transport wine. The wine would actually break down on ships. So you add some alcohol,
Fortified.
you add some clear grain spirits or some brandy into the wine. It'll stabilize it so it doesn't break down, and it became fashionable. We're using it more now in food.
Is port that too? Is port fortified?
Port is also fortified. Sherry is another.
Yeah, it's all these very old
vermouth.
school, like
Yeah.
National Geographic Explorers Club type
There you go.
beverages. Oh, what is it? Canary? Is that another one? That's fortified? Sack.
I'm not sure what Canary is.
I went on a
I know that's an
Wikipedia hole
island,
one
yeah.
time. It is an island, and it's an island that's controlled by Spain.
Right.
Apparently, they were making some kind of fortified wine there. The sack was a drink that you would make with Canary from the Canary Islands that had like a lemon or something in it. I don't
Okay,
remember.
cool.
But, yeah, I went in a whole Wikipedia hole about it.
Well, we're all nerds.
Yeah, I do the same thing at work sometimes.
Yeah.
Of like, you learn one thing and we're, well, how does that work? And you just keep going down. You go down rabbit holes.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many.
All right, so fortified wine, Spanish fortified wine barrel, Madeira. I don't have a really good context for what Madeira itself tastes like because I don't really drink wine, but
Yeah,
it's definitely darker.
yep.
You know, it's definitely
Yep.
darker.
Get a lot more fruit notes too.
Mm-hmm. It definitely feels like. You said this is higher proof?
Yes. So this one is 99.4, right? 99.6. Sorry. And this one is 107.5.
Okay.
Getting a flintiness on the nose.
Flint. Wow,
Okay.
that's a cool tasting
like
note.
a spark off of a lighter. That type of.
Interesting. Like
Yeah. It's not sulfur. It's
but like a manganese.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
nice. It's nice. Spicier.
Yeah.
Definitely spicier. Definitely warmer. Like a warmer taste. Yeah, definitely fruit. More fruity. It's nice. It's nice. I like it. It's definitely, I think this would be a good thing also for someone who was still getting into that rye taste. This would be like a good stepping stone also because you do have those more kind of rounder, sweeter, spicier notes on there.
Yeah, this is like sweet, like you would want to have this with a cigar. I'm not a cigar smoker, but I think this would.
That sounds nice actually. I don't really smoke cigars either, but it sounds nice. There's this is weird. There's a Chinese medicine that you use when you're studying kung fu that makes your bones hard. It's called Dit Da Jiao. And when you're training iron hand technique,
Right.
you hit something hard to micro fracture your bones, and then you use Dit Da Jiao, and everywhere that those fractures are, supposedly, and it's alcohol based, you rub it in your skin, and every kung fu master's got their own recipe for this that they pass down through the school. But in the study style that I studied Northern Shaolin when I was a kid, and this is what the Dit Da Jiao that my sifu would make smelled like, and you put it on your skin. You don't really smell it till it's on your skin. It's like perfume or something. You know? When you smell it in the bottle, it just smells like alcohol. Then you put it on your skin, and it smells sweet, and it smelled like honey, and it had a lot of this. It's very visceral smell memory for me because that was like after school every day. You know, I'd be going down and practicing kung fu, and this is the stuff that we would rub on our skin afterwards. After it had absorbed into your skin, the alcohol is absorbed in your skin and evaporated off. Then you get this sweet, sweet smell, and that's what it smells like.
There is a honey sweetness.
Honey
but,
sweetness.
Yeah, it's
Like a pitted cherry.
Yeah.
So like one of the things that I love about when whiskey's done right, it brings memories. That's the whole thing. Is that whether it's a positive memory or a negative one, it's meant to bring some sort of reaction to you. For me, it's one of those of like my grandparents' place in Kerrville. Growing up, they'd always had like a bag of cherries, not pitted. They always had the seeds in them.
Right.
But it was one of those where that's what it reminds me of, is kind of like that sweeter. And I mean, when they would cook and stuff like that with wine,
That's nice.
It brings me back to that.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really beautiful. Those are some of the best things about whiskey and tea for me, is when people are really brought back to like meaningful core memories that, those smell memories can't be accessed any other way. That's the thing about them, is that it's you can't necessarily conjure the feeling that you get smelling something the way you can hear a song in your mind's ear and you can picture a scene in your mind's eye, but it's really hard to conjure something in your mind's nose. And nothing really triggers the memory with such a visceral, experiential feeling to it as a smell that brings you back to somewhere. And if you guys want to do this also, I'm gonna put a little water in it just to get it closer to that proof of the other one, so I can get 100%. A little bit more of a
I'd love to see that
straight comparison. I do like this 107. Yeah, please.
That's yours.
Perfect.
Yeah, nice. I like that.
And
almost like a mapley a little bit. Like that honey kind of edges on maple a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny how sweetness translates differently. Most of the time with rye, I get a hard candy like that is unsweetened.
Yeah.
In
I
rye.
know exactly what you're talking about.
But this one has more of that honey, more of that vanilla.
Yeah. No, it's really nice. I will say that as like a rye person, I think I like this one better because I get more of that
spice and that punch.
That rye. I'm here for the rye, I'm here for that rye. But this is just, in and of itself, is just a really beautiful, very sophisticated whiskey. It's got a lot going on and it's very harmonious. It's almost like it's pretty different, honestly. Like considering that he says it's the same whiskey, it's the same stuff going
base
in.
spirit that went in, but instead it was just after it was aged in those and it went through some of the slow water, it was thrown into these barrels and then also brought down with that slow water.
Yeah, I like it. It's what it brings is very unique. The thing that is in this that's not in that is very, very unique and very nice in its own right. It doesn't scream rye to me as much. And as someone who, I want you to scream rye. I'm here for the screaming rye.
And but
it's really good.
I usually like finished ryes because of that, because the finished ryes tend to bring more bodies. The lighter, sweeter, crisper notes tend to become rounder, deeper. Now I'm getting a tartness that wasn't there previously. That tart cherry pie type.
I definitely could see this being a whiskey that those folks who don't think already like rye would be able to enjoy, and then maybe even help them get into rye, because you still taste the rye. It's still there.
Yes.
It's absolutely there.
Mm-hmm. But I found, especially when kind of pouring it for other people, this is one to where it's not as polarizing.
Right.
It's very, like you said, it's approachable. It still has those notes, but you can ease your way into it because some people don't like it hit in the face.
Yeah. It's like the sticky rice pu'er that we've got here. There's the sticky rice Sheng Pu-erh that a lot of people, and it's fantastic. The pu'er in it is great. The sticky rice is a great complement. It's not a compromise. It's not dumbed down, but that sweet sticky rice note gives people's palate something a little bit more familiar and on the sweeter side to grab onto, so that they can really let themselves enjoy what the Sheng Pu-erh is bringing, or in this case, what the rye is bringing to the table. Really comes through. It's really lovely. I like having them together too, one after another, because they really get a feel for what the Madeira cask does. And so, when is this coming out?
This should be coming out within the next month or two, I believe.
Really
this is going to be the next DRS release. So the previous one that we just did was a ruby red port finish.
Ooh.
So that one was very sweet, very candied, very rich too. It was one of those where it's perfect for putting up to a cigar or having as a dessert whiskey, where it's very sweet, something to have kind of after your meal.
The Still Austin journey has been really fun to watch because at the very beginning, they just wanted to celebrate local farmers. They wanted to show people the process from the beginning and the evolution, and seeing how many products are available now, just a few years in. Like I watched the process going from clear new make spirits to their first age spirits, and now I'm seeing all these bottled and bond releases.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the rye coming out, and inside of the rye category, there's multiple different versions of the rye.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's been so exciting. Also, the working with a local artist and making an impact right here in Austin, Texas.
Ooh. That's also a really nice pairing, and it's different. It brings out some like a muskiness in the tea that wasn't there the other one. And I do love this cover art.
So for all of our flagship products, we use the same artist for the covers, and for our bottled and bond series, that artist, Mark, I'm blanking on his last name right now. It's really bothering me.
That's okay. We'll put it in the
It's going to
caption,
come to me in like 15, 20 minutes, and I'm just going to shout it out randomly. But he's in charge and has done all of our flagship products. Our DRS stuff, each DRS we pair with a new artist. So a different local artist, where one of them we did was a 4-grain, where it was actually a stitched patch that was on the label that you could take the patch off the bottle and put like on a denim jacket or something. Another one was photographs. We had some to where it was Zuzu, the spray paint and graffiti artist. She had a bunch of labels laid out on the ground and then spray painted.
No way.
So each bottle was unique and different.
Wow.
So you had people coming in and be like, nope, that one looks different. I want that one.
Wow, that's brilliant, because you're going to want to collect some.
But each DRS we do is showcasing a different local artist.
And what's DRS stand for?
Distillery Reserve Series. So
Got it.
each of our flagship products, the bottled and bond, those you can find in stores. The Distillery Reserve Series you can buy online through us, but you can only pick them up and get them at our distillery themselves.
Got it. So you're not shipping them. They're not being distributed to any store. You've got to come to this distillery and get them. That's cool.
And
Love
now
that.
there's a third Nancy, the Order of Nancy. You want to explain what that is?
So the Order of Nancy is kind of it's the whiskey Illuminati for us. So it's our secret organization. But it's members to where they've signed up and they get kind of some specialty things where now we're doing to where they get pairings. They'll do groups of them will come by and they'll get to try different reserve bottles that were done in the past from our library that we still have. But they also get to do different barrels and try new and funky things in our rick house that we're not really wanting to pull those yet for a Distillery Reserve Series, or those aren't necessarily in the flavor profile that we're wanting to do, but it's things that we want to enjoy and show them so they're able to look at and do those things as well.
Cool. That's definitely the move if you are a big ass nerd about this sort of thing. Like we all, frankly, all of us here are, then that's definitely getting to see the inside.
That's the fun part.
That's what makes it fun. Yeah, it's great. It's cool to be a nerd now. And even if it wasn't, but I also love that your Nancy the Human. Her title is Master Blender.
Yes, so she's our master blender for us. So she's worked with a few other companies in the U.S. too, doing consulting and helping doing blending work for them. Wyoming Whiskey. She's done work with Iron Root in the past.
Wow,
Joseph Magnus.
Joseph Magnus, where she's done like a cigar blend for them. But she's in charge of our blending, to where she's nosing each of our barrel samples before pulling a barrel. We'll actually pull samples of it to see is it ready.
Right.
And we have a general time frame of when to start pulling samples. All of our stuff is it's getting older and older. So right now the general age of barrels that go into a blend is anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years of age. The minimum for our stuff to be called straight bourbon or straight rye whiskey is legally it has to be at least 2 years of age.
Got it.
So with us running 24/5, we're producing and trying to produce more than we're pulling, so that way we can increase our age statement over time and have a stockpile, so our stuff does increase in quality over time.
Got it. I'm not an age queen. You know what I mean? Like I don't really care
Yeah.
about the
Not
age.
either,
I care if the
but-
whiskey's good.
Right. Yes.
And whenever the perfect time is to bottle it, that's when I want it. You know.
Right.
I did a tour a couple of years ago, and it was set up by a friend of ours. And we went in, and while we were talking, I talked to the person conducting the tour, and I asked them about Nancy, and they sort of, she's really intimidating.
She is.
Yeah.
She is absolutely incredible. And when I first started, I worked at Ranger Creek before Still Austin. And Josh Gardner was the head distiller down there, and was kind of my friend and mentor who kind of taught me the foundations of pretty much everything I know.
Yep.
And kind of helped me, this is what to look for, this is what not. And he mentioned the élevage and slow water because
really
he'd
good.
heard of it. And so did that on like 1 or 2 barrels in there. And at the time I was so brand new, I didn't understand. And so I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing now, let's do this for some of the stuff. And then when I started working with Still Austin, I'd been working there for a few months, and then she came down. This was about 2 years ago when we actually first released the rye. So she came down and talked to kind of everybody within the company, talked to all of us, and that's when it started to hit me like, oh, she's like a celebrity within this world. This is, I had no clue, but she's so sweet. She's extremely humble and kind.
She does a course called Finding Faults in whiskey. So she looks at it as a way of separating what she wants, what she doesn't want, what's good, what's not good. The tour guide, her example was, do you see this whiskey over here? Let's save this because this is an example of what you don't do.
Yes.
And that could be tough for a lot of people's egos when you've got 2 years into aging something to up to 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, that can be damaging to your and bruising your ego.
Yeah.
But there needs to be somebody who says this, not
Absolutely, the pillar of severity. You know, I also think it's cool that you're seeing, you know, this industry, which it feels very, you know, male dominated a lot of the time, seeing more and more women in this highly, you know, prestigious position of being the blender and being the person with this, you know, really very, very strong impact on the final product, major impact. And women genetically are able to smell better in general than men. They have a more capacity for nuance and smelling different things. So it totally makes sense that you're starting to see that.
Anthropologically, I think it goes back to agriculture as well, where the men were out hunting and they had tasks where they were trying to find and bring home the meat. The women were generally keeping the house, and they were going through finding the right berries and the good things to eat in the agriculture around them. So they're more picky in determining what's right and what's wrong. And I think that's anthropologically what's happening. That, you know, when we go as men go into a store to buy a shirt, it's like shirt size large, blue
Color, first color.
Done. Perfect. I'm good. No, that doesn't.
Well, and also, we can speculate a lot on the anthropological stuff, but we know, without getting too much into that, certainly it is scientifically demonstrable that women have a more capacity to distinguish different fragrances than men in general. So
we've got a few more whiskeys to get to this evening.
Let's,
so we're doing more teas you've already got laid out.
And then I just want to say this one's really grown on me a lot over the course of me drinking it. I think adding that little bit of water and getting it to the same level, and then kind of leaving it, forgetting about it, drinking some tea, coming back to it, let me appreciate it for what it is, and it really is a spectacular whiskey. So it's exciting for it to be out in the world soon.
I love whiskeys there where you can have a conversation around the whiskey, and the whiskey, when you come back to it, it's like, oh, there was a thing over here.
This is like a sick ass dinner party. Like I'm at like a sick ass dinner party, and we're done with dinner, and we're like having a really good time drinking whiskey, I guess, after the dinner party. We're in the kitchen, and we're having like it's just a badass party where everything comes together, and it's really hitting right now.
Perfect. So we're here at West China Tea, and we love having you guys here talking with us. And CJ has a couple more whiskeys. I've got a couple more whiskeys. We've got some more conversations. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Sohan. Thank you, CJ.
Of course. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. Well, still Austin. Down on which road? Is St. Elmo?
It is, so St. Elmo. So closer way to look at it, if you're looking at big roads, is Ben White and South Congress.
Okay.
So St. Elmo is kind of that industrial complex right there.
And there's a lot of stuff there. There's food trucks. There's
food trucks.
There's breweries. There's a sake company. There's a lot of things in that little area. So get yourself down there, check it out, and West China Tea, as always. Thank you, Sohan, and come on down while we're here on I-35. You're moving soon?
We're moving soon. We're going to be moving mid-August. We're going to be, we'll hopefully still be open here, and there at the same time, give a little overlap so if people come in here, we can be like, hey, by the way, we're going to be closed here. But they're going to tear this building down. I-35, this is going to be the feeder road. I mean, maybe it might even be a freaking lane. I don't know. But it's going to be I-35 soon, and we will be down on East 7th and Chacon, right behind Suerte, across from Houston-Tillotson. But we're not there yet, so come. I don't know when this is coming out. You guys turn these out pretty fast. Yeah. So come if you're watching this with anytime before August, come down and enjoy the old place while she's still here.
It's a good spot.
It's a good spot.
I love it.
Me too. Me too.
By the way, the artist's name was Mark Burkhart.
Burkhart. I'm sorry. Yes, I was so confused.
Yep. Mark Burkhart. Beautiful. Lovely.
Thanks,
lovely.
Mark. Hugs and kisses.
Cheers, y'all.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you.